Hello, this is Mr. Stansbury. I'm going to take you through some of the problems on the 3D Part 2 assignment. Okay, first one we're going to look at is simplify. 4 to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power, always 1. If that was 4 trees to the 0 power, that would still be 1. Anything to the 0 power is always 1. G here, 7 over 4 to the negative first power. So, a couple ways to look at this. I'm going to do this. This is the same. This is a 1 here and a 1 here. So this is 7, because this negative 1 distributes to both of those parts here. So that's 7 to the negative first over 4 to the negative first. So any negative exponents, I can move to the other side. So that 4 to the negative first is going to come up there, and the 7 to the negative first come down here. And when they switch, it goes from negative, it switches signs, so it's going to be 4 to the first on the top and 7 to the first on the bottom, or just 4/7. Okay? All right. Number 12, write using powers of 2, 3, and or 5. So 1 over 9, that is the same as 1 over 3 squared. Probably our best bet, it's not super specific in here, but we're going to want to move that 3 squared up to the top, turn that into 3 to the negative second. Okay, so for G, that 9 we can turn into 3 squared to the K. And it says write using powers of 2, 3, and or 5. So 10 is 2 to the first times 5 to the first. So I say we just try that out for now. This is going to be 3 to the 2k on the top here, 2 to the first, 5 to the first. These have both, we want to move both of these up top here. So that's going to turn into 3 to the 2k. And since we're moving from the bottom to the top, we got to switch the sign of the exponent. So it's going to be times 2 to the negative first times 5 to the negative first. Something weird looking like that. Okay? Okay, let's take a look at 13. Write in simplest form without brackets. Whenever I see stuff inside of brackets without any powers, I'm always going to put a 1 with them. So that's 2 to the first, a to the first, b to the first right now. All those are going to get multiplied by 2. So that's 2 squared, a squared, b squared. Probably a nicer way to write this would be 4a squared, b squared. Okay? This one here. Doesn't matter what's inside the parentheses, since this is a 0 on the outside, it's going to equal 1. Okay, anything raised to the 0 power, always 1. All right, let's look at 14. Expand the brackets and write in simplest form. So, going to distribute this through to both of those. That's x to the first to make our life easy. X to the second times x to the third, since these are both have the same bases and we're multiplying these two. We actually add the exponent, so that's going to be x to the 2 plus 3 plus x to the 2 plus 1. So this is x to the 5th plus x to the 3rd. Okay, and that's simplest form, because you cannot add x to the 5th to x to the 3rd. You could multiply them, but you cannot add those together, so we have to leave it like that. Okay, let's see. Something in the parentheses here that does not have a power always is going to be 1, so I'm going to multiply all these powers by negative 1. So this is going to be, well, actually, let's see. We're going to actually, since this is not to the negative first power, this is x to the negative first, so it's really x to the negative first times, let's write it like this, just so this makes more sense. X to the third plus x to the negative first times x squared plus x to the negative first minus x to the positive first. Okay, so x to the negative first times x to the third, add those together, x squared. Those are the same base, negative 1 and 2. That's going to be x to the first, so plus x to the first. And then we have a positive times a negative. Well, let's see, because these are being multiplied. So that's going to give us negative, and then negative 1 plus 1 is x to the 0. So that should just be x squared plus x to the first minus anything to 0 is 1. Okay? That one is a little bit weird, but that's all right. We can figure these out. Just keep using those exponent rules and we'll be good to go. Simplify using the laws of exponents. The 4, like we've got powers of b and we've got a 4. So here's what we want to do. The 4 doesn't have anything to simplify with, so we're just going to leave the 4 there. And then we've got b to the 5th, not 3rd, but to the 5th, and then b to the 2nd on the bottom, so we would just do 5 minus 2. So this is going to, and we don't have anything left on the bottom, so we just end up with 4. Oops. B to the 5 minus 2 is b to the 3rd. Okay? Now this one here, kind of want to look at this as 3 separate little problems here. Whatever doesn't have a power, always put a 1 with. 24 over 6 just gives us, divided by 6 gives us 4. M to the 2nd minus m to the 2nd. So that's m to the 2nd minus 2. And then this is going to be n to the 4 minus 1, right? So this is 4. 2 minus 2 is 0. And that's going to be n to the 4 minus 1 is 3. This m to the 0 just turns into 1, so it's really 4 times 1, n cubed, so it's really 4n cubed. All right? Okay. 16, write without negative exponents. So if it's x to the 3rd on the top, if we put this really over 1 and move that down, that turns into, on the bottom, x cubed, and if there's nothing up on top, it's really just a 1, so we get 1 over x cubed would be this one. Okay? For this one, this is 3 to the 1st and b to the 1st. We're going to distribute this power to all of these powers here, so that's going to be 3 squared. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4th, and 1 times 2 is b squared. It says without negative exponents, so we have to move this a to the negative 4th down to the bottom, so it turns into 3 squared b squared on the top. And then now the a to the negative 4th moves the bottom and turns into a to the positive 4th. Okay? Okay. All right. Number 17, write without a fraction. So this a to the n is going to come up top here. It's positive n on the bottom, so now it's negative n on the top. And it's really 1 times a to the negative n, so we just leave it as a to the negative n. Okay? B to the negative m is going to need to come up on top. The a to the n is fine right where it's at because it says right without a fraction, so we just got to move the bottom stuff up. Since that's b to the negative m on the bottom, we switch that sign to b to the positive m. Okay? All right, 18, right without fractions. X to the 2nd is going to come up, so that's going to be x to the negative 2nd. Positive 2nd on the bottom, move to the top. Got to switch the sign of the exponent. 7 to the x minus 4 over x plus 5 over x squared. Just treat this as 3 different problems, and that makes this a lot easier. So 7 to the x, don't have to do anything with that. Minus 4, this x to the 1st has got to come up top, so that's x to the negative 1st. And then this x squared's got to also come up, so plus 5x to the negative 2nd. And we are done with that one as well. Okay. 19, write without fractions. So this x plus 3, both pieces here are being divided by x. So I find the simplest way to simplify these is I'm going to put x over x plus 3 over x. I'm just going to take both of those pieces and put it over x. X over x simplifies to 1 plus 3 over x. That's x to the 1st on the bottom, so that's got to come up top here. So that's 1 plus 3 x to the, it's positive 1 on the bottom, negative 1 on the top. And we end up with that. Okay, same idea here. Put each one of these over x. 2x squared over x to the 1st minus 3x to the 1st over x to the 1st plus 4 over x to the 1st. So this is going to be 2x squared minus 1, right? Because x squared over x to the 1st, 2 minus 1, minus 3x to the 1st minus 1 on the bottom. And then this is going to have to go up on the top. Another way you could potentially look at this, if we're kind of following the same pattern here, there is no x out here, so we can call this x to the 0, right? So we'd say plus 4x to the 0 minus 1. So then when we simplify this, 2 minus 1 is 1, so that's 2x to the first, or just 2x. 1 minus 1 actually gives us 0, so that turns into 1. So it's just minus 3. And then this is plus 4. 0 minus 1 is x to the negative first. And we just end up with that. Okay? All right, last one to look at, number 20, right without fractions. This is 4 over x to the negative first plus 2x to the first over x to the negative first. That's going to come up top. That's going to come up top. 4x to the first, because that's negative first on the top. It's going to be positive first on the x to the negative first on the bottom. It's going to be positive 1 on the top. So it's 4x to the first, or just 4x. And then this one here is going to be plus 2x to the first times another x to the first. So that's really going to be 4x plus 2 when we're going to add these two ones together, right? Because 2 to the x times x is 2 to the x, 2x squared. Okay? And then last one here, x cubed over x to the negative second minus 6x to the first over x to the negative second plus 10 over x to the negative second. Okay, simplify this. This is going to be x to the 3 minus negative 2, which is going to turn into plus 2, right? So that's going to be x to the 5th minus 6x to the 1 minus negative 2. So that's going to be plus. So that's negative 6x cubed. And then this x to the negative second is just going to move to the top to turn into plus 10x. It's negative 2 on the bottom, so it'll turn into positive 2 on the top, and we just end up with that. Okay? All right, that's all we have for the 3D Part 2 assignment. If you have any further questions, please feel free to ask.